With me now to discuss is Director of Strategic Analysis Australia and Adjunct Fellow at the Institute of Public Affairs, Peter Jennings. Peter, let's start with this non-existent Trump meeting. How long can Albo go without one of these meetings before it does start to impact things like AUKUS and national security more broadly?
It's clearly doing that already, Caleb, and I would say that, in the history of the Australia-US alliance relationship, there wouldn't be a time in the past where a president and a prime minister have not actually spoken for 6 or 7 months and met to talk about these issues. And it's very clearly now beyond just the challenges of scheduling a meeting. I think that we are getting a sense of disapproval out of Washington, DC, and the president doesn't see it as a priority to meet with Mr. Albanese, even though he's meeting many, many other world leaders. And so we should read this as a problem, just as the Americans telling us that we are significantly underspending on defence is a problem. And to refer back to your earlier comments, how is it that our foreign minister can go to Washington and not even want to raise that as an issue? Instead, the question is, well, was it raised with you? But surely we have an honest enough relationship that we can talk about these things. So there are problems in the relationship, and our government needs to be stepping forward to work out how to deal with them.
Well, because Wong says that Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State in the United States, didn't raise the defence spending with her. Why would that be?
Well, why wouldn't she raise it with him? I mean, there's a review of AUKUS. They've told us that our spending is significantly under what we should be aiming at. They're concerned that we're losing our military capabilities. Why wouldn't we be raising that first and foremost with the Americans? If we think there's a positive story to tell, Penny Wong should be telling it. They know there's a problem. The reason no one's talking about it is they know there's a serious problem. And the Prime Minister is digging a hole for himself by saying that he's not going to make any changes. There's a sort of a lack of maturity, I think, apart from anything else, in how we are dealing with the US right now. And this is not your normal bilateral relationship. They're our principal security provider. We are utterly dependent on them for our security, for much of the military technology that we have, for our intelligence supply, and for the AUKUS relationship. And yet somehow we can't bring ourselves to talk to them.
Well, but this is the point, right, Peter? I mean, in your view, what is behind the pig-headedness of the Prime Minister and the government not to simply say, yeah, sure, we'll increase our defence spending? I mean, if Trump can go off to NATO and get every country but Spain to sign up to 5% of GDP, they all concede that that's the best thing for them and for the United States and for the broader world. What is it about Albanese that makes him think he's special?
Well, one, his heart is not in defence. It's just not a priority for him and never has been. Two, he doesn't want to admit publicly that we have a problem with China, because in the Albanese world, we've stabilised our relations with China. No one else believes that, but he doesn't want to admit he's made a mistake. Three, Caleb, he discovered during the election campaign that there was some political benefit to him to be seen to be at a distance from Trump. And unfortunately, he's carried that into the election. He's won. So, now he needs to get back to normal diplomacy, and that means talking to the president. I think there is a combination of a lack of interest in security and a certain stubbornness, which is making Albanese just refuse to deal with what is now, I think, a serious problem in our alliance relationship.
Well, you mentioned China. Fiji is pushing back against China's efforts to set up a military base in the region. The Prime Minister yesterday was speaking at the National Press Club. He also said that he would offer his countrymen to fill our ADF shortfalls, which is a pretty extraordinary move. Of course, the PM's going off to meet with Xi Jinping this month, and that'll be his fourth meeting with Xi, with zero, of course, with Donald Trump. These sorts of things should be coming up for discussion, but one imagines they won't be.
Well, firstly, good on Sitiveni Rabuka for saying what he said. He is clearly now one of the elder statesmen of the Pacific Islands region, and I think a person who's very close to Australia and close to the Australian military. So I welcome his comments, and I think he also reflects what quite a number of Pacific Island leaders are thinking. As for Albanese's visit to Beijing, wouldn't it just be terribly embarrassing, Caleb, if what happens is that he'll have had 4 face-to-face meetings with President Xi before one face-to-face meeting with our most important alliance partner, and by the way, our biggest economic investor in Australia, that's the United States. Something is going terribly wrong here with how Albanese's thinking about his priorities.
Yeah, and well, I mean, Donald Trump probably won't call him a handsome boy, so he's got that on the Chinese ledger, right? Before we go, Peter, the US has stopped some of its weapon deliveries to Ukraine in an attempt to redirect resources to put America's interests first. And in a telling sign, the Kremlin welcomed the reduction of shipments, saying that it would help end the war sooner. And of course, that is what the Kremlin would want, but they want that to be in their favour. What sort of rein do you think Trump is trying to pull here?
I'm puzzled to really know. And the trouble is that with much of the Trump administration's management of this issue, what you hear on Friday could well be changed by the time we get to Monday. My view is by far the most important American interest right now in this is that Ukraine is not defeated by Russia. And if that means supplying them with weapons, that's what the Americans should be doing. The Ukrainians are not asking for American boots on the ground. They're just asking for the weapons to continue to fight the war. And that's in America's interest and Europe's interest. So I'd hope that's where the Pentagon would come out on this matter. But one thing I think it points to, Caleb, is that they don't have enough domestic production capacity for their own weapons. And that's something we should be thinking about as well. It means to say that if we're pressed, we can't just imagine that a phone call to Washington is going to break through and create an instant supply for us when America has to meet its own priorities in a conflict. And so there should be some defence spending lessons that flow to Australia as a result of this as well.
Indeed, Peter Jennings, great to see you as always.